Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of freedom. You see how I condensed that, but this is your daily dose of freedom. I appreciate you joining us today, this Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. A lot going on in the news, in the media. We'll get to some of those headlines a little later in the program, but first, let's start here. Guys, I started to mention this yesterday, but I didn't go in depth. Today I will. Guys, China is on the march. They have waged a war against us in the United States of America. It's called the Disintegration Warfare strategy that they're using against us. Peter Schweizer has written about this in his new book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. And that's exactly what they're doing. As a matter of fact, they're murdering Americans, if I could use a stronger word. This is absolutely intentional. This is warfare without China having to fire a shot. I want you to remember this. Look at what China has already done. China has already bought farmland inside of the United States of America, which is absolutely crazy. China has installed their own police departments inside of major metropolitan areas such as New York City. China has shipped fentanyl across our borders, killing 100,000 Americans per year. Also, China has now been sending military-aged men across Joe Biden's open borders in the United States of America. And the last thing that I want to talk to you about today is China has been sending what are called sear switches. I mentioned it yesterday, or Glock switches into the United States in massive quantities so that these switches go to some of our blue cities, and gangsters and criminals are using these, purchasing them illegally, and killing even more Americans. Guys, China has waged war against the United States of America, and we better wake the hell up real fast. That's what we're getting into today. I got some more headlines as well. 3 headlines that I want to get to as well, since we're talking about open borders as well. This from Daily Wire: illegal alien arrested for alleged child rape, stabbing adult in face during armed robbery, caused terror. Illegal alien arrested for allegedly murdering toddler. And also we have the Lake and Riley case. Those are some of the biggest cases that have happened this week as far as illegal aliens causing violence and harm within the United States, thanks to Joe Biden's open border policy. But all of this stuff is connected, and we'll get to it. But again, I want to start with this. Again, remember what I said. China buying farmland inside of the United States. China installing their own police departments to police Chinese citizens or Chinese American citizens within the United States of America. China sending fentanyl across our borders to kill 100,000 or up to 100,000 Americans per year. China is now sending military-aged men into our country thanks to Joe Biden's open border policies. And now, again, these sear switches or Glock switches that are turning firearms into automatic machine guns, and they are causing havoc across the United States, particularly in our blue cities. China is on the march while we sleep. Guys, there's not going to be many people talking about this, and this is exactly why I am. Some people are going to be talking about the shutdown. I'll mention the shutdown. Whoa. Guys, I don't listen. I don't give a flip if there's a government shutdown. I really don't. A partial government shutdown. All it means is that we saved taxpayer dollars for a few days. Whoop-de-doo. Thank you. We need it, especially in this inflation. I'll talk about that later. Also, you know what happened in Michigan yesterday, but let I go here. Here's the summary from Breitbart. The communist Chinese government has been flooding the U.S. with illicit gun parts as part of again, this is called the Disintegration Warfare strategy. All right, quote unquote. It is being employed against America, aimed at tearing the country apart from the inside. Again, this according to Peter Schweizer in his new book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. He says that Chinese companies, which are heavily regulated by the Chinese government, are flooding flooding the U.S. with auto sear switches. That's a small metal device, also known as Glock switches, which I mentioned, that convert handguns into machine guns. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with firearms, and I have a sneaky suspicion that if you're listening to this podcast, you have some familiarity with firearms. So obviously there are semi-automatic firearms, which is the vast majority of firearms that are on the market that we can all purchase, simply meaning all you have to do every time you squeeze the trigger, a bullet comes out. That's what a semi-automatic weapon is. All right. But automatic, you pull that trigger and you're talking about a burst of so many rounds. It's absolutely insane. That's machine gun fire. That's automatic. One trigger pull, several bullets. All right. Now, we all know that these are illegal inside of the United States of America, but they're being shipped in boxes by the thousands, according to Peter Schweitzer from China. So the auto sear switches are now being sent like fentanyl is being sent in the United States, or for the same reasons. And it's for no other reason than to sow chaos inside of the United States of America. This is very important. I mean, the Democrat Party sows chaos within the United States of America. But did you know the Chinese government has something to do with that as well? They're doing the same thing. And it saddens me that the Democrat Party, which in my opinion is a cult nowadays, is now using the same tactics as the Chinese Communist Party to take down this country. But China believes they're going to have the last laugh. And I hate to tell you, I think they're right. I think China is much smarter than America's Democrat Party. Not as smart as the Republican Party, but the Republican Party is weak. We have very, very weak leadership. And so this puts the country in danger. So what does China's disintegration warfare look like? All right. So Peter Schweitzer writes, here's what it does. It focuses on, in the Chinese leader's words, going after the United States soft underbelly. All right. That includes our politics. That includes economics. And that includes, I think this is very important because we see this. We're all suffering from this. The spirit and psychology of its people. We've noticed the PSYOPs campaign that the left has waged against us. China is doing the same. All right. So it is based on the ancient Chinese strategist and General Sun Tzu's teaching on how to win a war without fighting. The strategy is aimed at undermining a rival country's national will, our values, as well as our cohesion. And right now, because of the lack of cohesion, and because of our identity crisis, right now we've got DEI and CRT that is so pervasive, rather than our Judeo-Christian heritage within the United States, that we're not cohesive, that we're losing our national will to fight back against the left and to fight back from enemies within and enemies from without. We're being worn down. It's working. We're being overwhelmed. All right. Now, Schweitzer uses leaked U.S. U.S. Fed law enforcement documents to reveal how China is trying to arm felons within the United States. I'm sorry, I'm just writing notes here. How felons are trying to arm, how China is trying to arm felons within the United States. He writes criminal gangs across the U.S. with these machine gun switches known as, again, sear switches or Glock switches. All right. So the penny-sized sear switches began arriving, he writes, in massive quantities in 2018. We all know that they're illegal. You have to have a special license and you have to have a buttload of money. Let's be real. If you're going to be able to own a machine gun inside of the United States, they've been all outlawed since Al Capone days. All right. So you can get a special, I think it's a class 3 license. Forgive me, I forget some of this stuff, but I believe it's a class 3 license. Anyway, it costs tens of thousands of dollars to be able to get that license and to be able to purchase a machine gun. So there's a extensive background check that it's required, even beyond the background check that you already go to that way. And that's why criminals in the U.S. should no way be allowed to purchase these things. But this is how they're getting around it. They're using Chinese websites in English in English to buy these parts, to buy these Sears switches. Here's some stats for you. Between 2019 and 2021, crimes involving machine gun fire rose 4,200%. In 130 cities across the U.S. Think about that. All right, listen to this again. Between the years of 2019 and 2021, crimes involving machine gun fire rose 4,200% in 130 cities. Guys, let me say this. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again. I'm okay with machine guns as long as law-abiding citizens can own machine guns too. That way, we can have an equal fight with the criminals and gang members if they come after us. But we're being put at a disadvantage, all right? And China knows this. China knows this, and frankly, so does the left. When I think about it, China and the Democrat Party have the same enemies, and those are patriots that love America. Man, that's such a good point. I got to say that again. I'm writing down notes on my own show, Gabe. China and the Democrat Party have the same enemy. That's patriots. You have to understand that. I'm literally writing this down. I know that sounds ghetto fabulous, but I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget that line. Every once in a while, you say something when you're on talk radio or podcasting where you're like, that was good. You didn't think of it beforehand. You didn't plan it. It just comes out. And I'm like, man, I want to save that. So that's what's happening there. That's the reason for my pause. Carl, this is silly. You're ghetto fabulous. Yes, I absolutely am. But anyway, China and the left have the same enemy. And we're at a disadvantage. Those are patriots. Those are people like you and I that love this country. We love the Bill of Rights. We love our Constitution. We love our Judeo-Christian heritage. We understand that we had some rough times at the beginning of this country, whether it's slavery, whether it's the Jim Crow South, and all that kind of thing, all those things. But we worked out those evils. Our Constitution helped us to work out those evils. And now we're still a young country, and we're thriving, the most powerful country in the nation, despite how the left is trying to tear it down, systematically tear it down. But sadly, China and the left, they have the same enemies, and that's us. That's people like you and I. So they want to get rid of us. China does, and so does the left. So the left doesn't want us to be armed because they don't want us to be able to defend ourselves against them, a tyrannical government, whether, the tyrannical government under a Joe Biden style leadership turns the military on us or what have you. But how will we defend ourselves when the little brown shirts of the left start killing us too? All these criminals, if they could, they vote Democrat. And those that are close to being criminal, they're going to vote Democrat. We all know that. All right. So since U.S. law enforcement has gotten hip to identifying these Chinese-made switches, Chinese producers have switched their tactics, according to Peter Schweitzer, and increasingly are shipping them to Mexico and smuggling them across the border into the U.S., where they eventually end up in the hands of gangs, felons, and drug dealers. And he writes, drug cartels in Mexico are also starting to manufacture the devices themselves using machines provided by Chinese companies, using machines that are provided by Chinese companies. So now you have Mexico starting to build these Sears switches. They're sending them into the United States of America so they can sow more chaos and we kill ourselves. And then we're going to be replaced by the illegal aliens that are coming into the country. I mean, this stuff is just astonishing. You cannot make it up. You cannot make this stuff up. And a lot of people, we're going to be like Europe. We're going to be like Europe. Not like Europe. People used to say on the right that America is becoming Europe. I think David Harsanyi wrote a book called Eurotrash, and he's absolutely right. But I think it goes further. I think it's even worse now. I think we're going to be like Mexico in the areas where the drug cartels reign. I really think that's what America is going to be like. I think it's going to be so bad. The left is going to try to take power from us using the force of the federal government, but there's always going to be criminals with weapons that are absolutely evil, that are willing to shoot and kill people, just point blank. My concern is that we won't be like Europe. We'll be even worse. It'll be like living in an America where we have to be worried about Mexican cartels all the time, except the Mexican cartels won't be Mexican cartels. They'll be American criminals. Oh man, that's where we're at. We're being replaced. We're being replaced by people, or we have illegal aliens that are being imported into this country that I think would be willing to do just that, given the stories that I'm going to share with you shortly here. All right. But this is why the replacement theory is so true, and it is happening. You are being replaced. I don't care what the left says. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. They're nuts. They're lying. What do you think is happening when they're sending all these illegal aliens? Joe Biden is allowing all these illegal aliens to come into the country. They're allowing them to vote in some cases. Even, we'll play this video for you later. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. He's crying uncle when it comes to the sanctuary city policies that he claims he can't rid the city of, and we'll show that video for you shortly. He can't get rid of these sanctuary city policies, so he can't do much about that, all that kind of stuff. But he's getting frantic. The left is getting frantic because we're in an election year, let's face it, and crime is out of control in their cities. More and more people are dying. But nonetheless, it's their strategy of bringing replacements in to replace Americans that's part of the problem. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing. So the CCP used virtually the same tactic as they did with fentanyl, according to Peter Schweitzer. I'm sorry. He said they have a delivery system. He says, when U.S. authorities successfully began blocking shipments sent from China via mail or parcel, Chinese sellers switched to a land bridge in Mexico to continue supplying these devices to criminals in the United States. And again, just as I mentioned, that's exactly what they're doing now to these Sears switches. So there was an internal memo that was leaked to him from the Department of Homeland Security, with a map showing that the distribution is concentrated in our major cities. That is Los Angeles, that is San Francisco, that is Chicago, that is Detroit, that is Miami here in Florida, that is Washington, that is New York, and that's Philadelphia. Now, according to the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, the number of switches seized by federal law enforcement officials investigating crimes jumped by 570%, quote, during a period of 2017 to 2021 compared to the previous 5 years, close quote. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Wow. Now, also, what's being imported are silencers. You guys know what those are, silencers, suppressors. We always see them in movies, and, somebody puts a silencer on the gun, even though they're not as quiet as the movies, all right? But anyway, they're quieter, all right? They muffle the sound of gunfire where it's not as noticeable, but it still is noticeable. I've been around people that have shot firearms with silencers, and it's like, not as quiet as you would think. Definitely not like the movies, all right? All right, so, but anyway, he says, speaking of silencers now, or suppressors, as they're called, in just the first quarter of 2023, officials seized 106 illegal suppressors at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport alone. In December of 2022, he writes, U.S. officials in Michigan indicted 7 men for procuring these auto Sears switches from China. He says, quote, these devices are an emerging threat to our communities, our children, our law enforcement officers, and anyone who stands in the path of their indiscriminate spray, quote, unquote, said U.S. Attorney Mark Totten. In 2022, the ATF announced a 500% increase in the confiscation of auto Sears switches around the country. So, cities such as St. Louis continue to devolve into war zones. In 2021, Schweitzer writes, the ATF reported 66 incidents of full auto gunfire. The next year, there were 339. Wow. Well over a third of those occurred in St. Louis. Man, Chinese companies are also importing these firearm suppressors. Again, he writes, he details how beginning in 2019, a huge influx of illegal silencers or suppressors began making their way into the U.S. from China. In 3 years, federal law enforcement has traced 42,888 suppressors illegally purchased from China. So we all know that felons can't legally own them. Actually, even if you're not a felon, you cannot legally own them unless you get that special license, that special classification. But this is enabled criminal gangs, he writes, and drug cartels in America to get around the requirements by buying them in large quantities from China. And over the next 3 years, he says, federal officials traced, again, that number, 42,888 suppressors. All right. Now, the suppressors, he says, have also been sold on English websites hosted on Chinese servers. It is just amazing to me, the hooks that China has on the United States of America. And it just seems like we're oblivious. We're paying attention to Ukraine and Russia. And frankly, I'm so sick and tired of this is just a side note here. I'm so sick and tired of Joe Biden talking about there needs to be a ceasefire with Israel. There should be a ceasefire. I've said this once. I'll say it again. And I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,000 more times. There should not be a ceasefire until Israel wipes out every single Hamas soldier. The guy, Aaron Bushnell, that burned himself alive the other day. Just a completely, absolutely insane stupidity. The guy died for nothing. He burned on earth, and he's probably burning in hell. I hate to say that based upon the learning a little more about his family. This seems to be a nice, decent, religious type family, but for whatever reason, their son went astray. Obviously, he was brainwashed to some extent. Absolutely crazy. Okay, so now getting back to this, but there a lot of these English websites are mislabeling silencers, so that's another workaround so they can be shipped to the U.S. Guys, see, this is the thing. When you make all of these laws, anti-gun laws, anti-2A laws, criminals always find a way to get around those laws. And then you have countries, sadly, that are evil and smart, or at least parties like the Chinese Communist Party, that know and understand that and will exploit that. And that's exactly what's happening here. All right. Here's an example of a U.S. murder by one of these Glock switches. This was reported by the Daily Mail. Glock switches, they noted a recent criminal case involving the illegal devices, including the fatal shooting of 53-year-old accountant Paul Coots from, Poughkeepsie, New York. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Poughkeepsie, New York, Poughkeepsie. So I think it's Poughkeepsie or Poughkeepsie, New York, whose masked assailant sprayed him with 30 bullets using a handgun that was modified by a Glock switch. So these criminals are getting these things, and they want to make sure that there's no way you're going to be able to get away. Even if they're a crappy shot, all they have to do is unload, 30 rounds on you with one single trigger pull, and you're dead and gone. That's why you should at least be armed. You should at least be armed with a firearm, in my opinion. Wherever you should always be fighting for two. Listen to me. If you're an anti-gun, get over it. Criminals are always going to get their hands on guns. They always are. All right, the Second Amendment is for it to fight back against a tyrannical government. But let's face it, the immediate threat are always going to be criminals getting their hands on firearms. You don't want to be put at a disadvantage, even though these Glock switches put us all at a disadvantage. At least the thought of being able to fire back around. Guess what happens? I don't care if they got a machine gun in their hand. You point a weapon at someone, you shoot a firearm at someone that is trying to kill you. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to duck. They're going to run. They'll probably shoot back, so make sure you take cover. But maybe you'll shoot them dead. Man. There's another example. The Daily Mail also wrote about a situation in East Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is a quote from the district attorney there, someone by the name of Hillar Moore, Hillar, who says, we're seeing Glock switches used all over the place, whether it's murder, attempted murder, witness intimidation, shooting up in a neighborhood, or shooting up houses, quote unquote. In the last 2 years, Hillar's office has seen over 80 criminal cases that has involved Glock switches. Again, turning turning handguns into machine guns. Oh, man. And American politicians, sadly, are doing little, if anything at all, to stop this. He asked, where are the American politicians? Here's what he writes, and I quote, "No American president appears to have brought this up with Beijing in his consultations with President Xi. He says President Biden has pressed for gun restrictions on ordinary Americans, but has never publicly discussed this problem." It's because he's compromised, Peter. Where criminal elements are gaining access to machine guns courtesy of Chinese manufacturers and illegal shipments. All right, Senator Mitch McConnell is also silent, despite the fact that apparently the two top business cargo airports are in the state of Kentucky. I did not know that. Man. So he writes, that Mitch McConnell has been silent. Peter Schweitzer has been silent on the subject, quote unquote. He also writes that holding China to account, exposing and denouncing its conduct should be expected, but he has so far done none of those things. Schweitzer also noted that Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota and Cory Booker wrote Attorney General Merrick Garland in 2021 to express concerns about the switches. They mentioned China's role as a supplier, but did not call for any actions towards Beijing in response. Guys, this is why we have to get away from counting on China to be a major manufacturer for many of the products that we buy. If not most of the products that we buy, sadly, within the United States of America. He says similarly, when 11 senators who introduced a bill to tighten restrictions on owning switches, they also did not propose any actions against China. So you bring it up to sound good and to sound tough, but you don't do anything about it. While American politicians pursue restrictions on American gun manufacturers, they fail to take China to task, Schweitzer writes. He says, and I quote, "U.S. political leaders are more focused on going after American gun manufacturers producing a legal product for millions of Americans than cracking down on Chinese companies catering to and further weaponizing criminal gangs inside of the United States." Schweitzer concludes that, as with drug warfare, China is attempting to incite civil unrest in the U.S., similar to its own century of humiliation, in which Beijing fought Western powers for sowing division in China in the 19th century and early 20th century. He says, in the same way that it flipped the opium wars of the 19th century and created the fentanyl wars of the 21st century, Beijing now works to create a century of humiliation and weaken the United States by fomenting division, by putting weapon-enhancing technologies into the hands of felons and criminal gangs, but also fueling social divisions on U.S. streets. Which that's so important. It's why I'll talk to you too about Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears and what happened to her with a man pretending to be a woman that's in the state Senate in Virginia. We'll get to that story just shortly here. But first, before I do want to play this video clip for you. This is New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and he's sounding off on the violence that's perpetrated in New York City by these illegal aliens. So he's calling for New York City sanctuary city law to be changed so that criminal illegal aliens can be deported. Sounds like common sense to me. Here's Mayor Eric Adams. Go ahead and roll it, por favor, Gabe.
Now, the overwhelming number of migrants and asylum seekers that are here, they want to work. I still don't understand why the federal government is not allowing them to work. They need to have the right to work, like all of us that have come to this country had the ability to do so. But those small numbers that are committing crimes, we need to modify the sanctuary city law that if you commit a felony, a violent act, we should be able to turn you over to ICE and have you deported. It is a right to live in this city, and you should be not committing crimes in our city for doing so. Right now, we don't have the authority to do so.
So that's New York City Mayor Eric Adams saying that, New York City should have the right to deport illegal aliens that commit crimes. And also that, he says that he calls them migrants. They're illegal aliens. They should be allowed to work like all of us that came to this country. Mayor, you didn't come to this country. For God's sakes, you were born in this country. We're U.S. citizens. They are not. They are illegal aliens. They invaded the country. They skipped the line. You got legal immigrants that have paid thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to be able to become legal citizens. And you have these fools jumping and cutting the line and getting paid by U.S. taxpayer dollars in New York to be illegals, to invade our country. I mean, this is absolutely asinine. So that point is very stupid by New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I'm sorry. Illegal aliens don't have the right to work and take jobs from Americans in your city. And I don't know why New Yorkers aren't standing up to that. But having said that, at least he got the second part right. You got illegal aliens in your city that are committing crimes. There should be a one-way ticket out of here. And quite frankly, if they commit murder here and their country doesn't want them, I don't understand why we can't execute them day of. And I mean that with all sincerity. I'm sick of this crap. And that's the only way that it'll stop. Now, let me share with you three stories real quick. Three headlines. Hat tip Daily Wire. Illegal alien arrested for alleged child rape. Stabbing adult in face during armed robbery. Cause terror. Second headline. Illegal alien arrested for allegedly murdering toddler. Third headline, which we've all been discussing this week. Illegal immigrant suspects in Laken Riley murder accused of disfiguring her skull. I'm sure many of you heard this news as the latest details emerged yesterday. So let's just go over this real quick. Newly filed arrest affidavits in the case of the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley state that the suspect, a 26-year-old illegal alien from Venezuela, used an object in the crime. He is accused of, quote, unquote, disfiguring her skull, and is also accused of dragging her body to a secluded area to hide the fact that he killed her. Now, keep in mind, this guy was hired by the University of Georgia. I suspect he had a fake green card. I don't know. I'm speculating. His brother certainly did. That was working for the university as well. He's since been fired. But this crime, this murder, was committed in daylight, broad daylight. The allegation against Jose Ibarra of dragging Riley's body was, quote, was filed to support the charge of concealing the death of another person, close quote. This according to ABC News. The affidavits estimate that Riley was killed between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. on February 2nd. Broad freaking daylight. Riley was a nursing student in Augusta University's Athens campus. She was a member of the Alpha Chi Omega sorority. She was memorialized at a vigil that was held on Monday. One of the speakers there said Laken showed devotion with every aspect of her life. It was a woman by the name of, or a student by the name of Chloe Mullis. She's the president of University of Georgia's chapter of Alpha Chi Omega. She said doing things halfway just wasn't an option. She went on to say about Laken Riley, we lost one of the brightest lights that has ever been, quote unquote. Ibarra was held by Border Patrol in September of 2022 after invading our country. And then back in August 23, the New York police arrested him and charged him with acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17 and a motor vehicle license violation as well. ICE also claimed Ibarra was released before ICE had a chance to request he be held until immigration authorities could put him in custody. Unbelievable. So Riley's family released a statement after her death saying in part, quote, Laken was an amazing daughter, sister, friend, and overall person in general. Her love for the Lord was exemplified in every aspect of her life. She will be missed every day, but we promise to honor her life moving forward in a very big way. During this most difficult time, we ask that you respect our privacy and provide us the time and space necessary to grieve our daughter's life that was tragically cut short, quote unquote. They have the hope of heaven. But that does not change the pain that they feel here on earth, losing their daughter tragically and needlessly. Honestly, man, I can't imagine. All right, another headline. Illegal alien arrested for allegedly murdering a toddler. An illegal alien from Central America was arrested this week in connection with the murder of 2-year-old Jeremy Pooh Caceres in Maryland. The Prince George's County Police Department's homicide unit arrested 25-year-old Nilson Noel Trejo Granados I know I'm butchering that. I'm sure Gabe is laughing. In connection with the murder earlier this month at Langley Park. The toddler and his mother were shot as two groups of males opened fire on each other. The toddler died a short time later, while the mother is expected to make a full recovery. And she will never make a full recovery because she's going to be tormented her entire life by this. 4 other individuals have been arrested in connection with the murder. 2 minors, ages 15 and 16, were amongst the 2. They were not named because of their age. And then you have 33-year-old Israel Fuentes Jr., 28-year-old Johnny Alejandro Tercios. All right, Trejo Granados is charged with murder, first degree, murder, second degree, 2 counts of assault, first degree, assault, second degree, attempted first degree murder, and attempted second degree murder. Guys, remember when Trump said they're not bringing their best and their finest and everybody went absolutely nuts? It's true. These countries are releasing prisoners. These countries are letting, why would these countries, think about this, why would these countries allow their able-bodied men to just abandon their countries? It's because a good portion of them are no freaking good, and they know it. Oh, man. U.S. Immigration, or U.S. ICE, said in a statement that Trejo Granados is an illegal alien from El Salvador, that he had been ordered to be deported from the U.S. for well over a year. But Democrat sanctuary cities allowed him to remain loose on America's streets. Thanks, Democrats. On November 7, 2022, a DOJ immigration judge in Newark, New Jersey, ordered Trejo Granados' removal from the U.S. The Montgomery County Police Department arrested Trejo Granados March 21, 2023, and charged him with theft, $100 to $1,500. Those charges remain pending. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement lodged an immigration detainer on Trejo Granados with the Montgomery County Detention Center. All right, so that's a bunch of details. He was arrested again on September 26, 2023, and charged with theft less than $100 and attempted obstructing and hindering. The statement continued. ICE lodged an immigration detainer with the MCDC on Granados September 27, 2023. However, MCDC refused to honor the detainer and released. Oh, man. Of course they did. And they released him back out into the wild, so to speak, so that he could murder a 2-year-old American child. A legal alien arrested for alleged child rape, stabbing adult in face during armed robbery. Hat tip Daily Wire. An illegal alien was arrested this week in Louisiana for allegedly raping a minor and for a separate incident where he allegedly stabbed a victim in the face while committing an armed robbery. Minor offenses. The Kenner Police Department arrested 19-year-old illegal alien Angel Matias Castellanos Oriana, a Honduran national, I know I butchered that, on Sunday, quote, after he committed an armed robbery and stabbed the victim, quote unquote. According to the department, WVUE reports that the stabbing victim was approached by Castellanos Orellana as they were getting out of their vehicle, and Castellanos Orellana demanded the victim's property. Castellanos Orellana allegedly stabbed the victim multiple times in his face and in his back. Guys, these people don't have the same values that we do. It's not that we're better people. We live under a better system, and this is why I can't stand that the left is trying to take us down. It drives me absolutely insane. They would have nowhere else to go themselves. I'm not even convinced that many people on the left understand the damage that they're doing to this country. All right, moving on. Enough of this. Again, you're listening to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, please remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. That includes Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. If you're watching us on YouTube and Rumble, would you please share this podcast? Subscribe, share it, review it. That'll help us move up the charts. More people will get to see us. Extremely, extremely important. I want to pull up some headlines for you. But before I do, let me mention this, because this is the obvious one, if you will. But President Trump won the Michigan primary resoundingly. Let me see if I see the latest numbers. I don't see the latest numbers, ironically. I'm looking right at Real Clear Politics, but he was upwards of 70%. I think Nikki Haley was just shy of 30%. Oh, here we go. Michigan GOP Trump 68.1% of the vote. And you have, whereas Haley with 26.5% of the vote. So he absolutely crushed her by 42 points. So just so that you're aware, guys, I got to be completely honest with you. I don't even give a flip about the primary anymore. For all intents and purposes, it is over. I know Nikki Haley is trying to hold on, and and she's got an argument. Her argument is, listen, I'll be here in case something happens to Trump, or maybe, as Ari Fleischer mentioned, maybe she'll try to get that third party lane, get all the independents. But she doesn't appear to be popular. You have to wonder how many Democrats are crossing over to vote for vote for Nikki Haley. And I don't have any ill will towards Nikki Haley. I don't hate Nikki Haley. I don't dislike her. I don't know her as a person, but as a politician, I just never thought she was great. And obviously, many Republicans feel the same way. There's a headline that I won't be able to get to today, but I am going to do a podcast on this. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Keep tuning in. A third pipe bomb camera deliberately turned away from the scene on J6. Oh, and I forgot to mention, guys, I don't know how I did this. This show is not a show without the help from MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell and MyPillow.com. Please go to the Radio Podcast Square. And if you would, if there's a product that you're going to purchase anyway, if you would go to MyPillow.com, click on the Radio Podcast Square. If they have that product, would you consider buying it from them? American jobs, American manufacturing, a guy that loves the country, whether you disagree with him or not, he absolutely loves the country. And he's, again, providing American jobs and American manufacturing, which we need more of, especially given what you've just heard, this war that China has waged against us in the United States, and they are waging successfully, thanks in large part to this feckless administration that is in the White House. So just a heads up, RFK Jr. gets names on 2 more state ballots, Arizona and Georgia. So he's continuing to make inroads there. Let me see what other headlines I want to make sure that I mentioned to you real quickly before we close out with this video of Winsome Sears, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. I love the way she handled this dude pretending to be a woman in the state Senate there, and the disrespect that she got. It was just nasty. So I can't stand that, but it is what it is. But I think she addresses it, and I think that she addresses it effectively and well. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for today's tip sheet, and here it is. Get a little bit of cheat sheet when it comes to the news. Not that I don't do researching beyond that. I actually look at this for 5 minutes and then go on. I have to mention too, Joe Biden obviously won the primary in Michigan as well, his primary, but you have a lot of people on the left freaking out because there was the uncommitted vote for people that were the pro-Hamas voters in Michigan. The Rashida Tlaib's and her ilk in Michigan. So I think you had somewhere between 15 to 20% of voters in Michigan, primary voters, that voted uncommitted. Guys, those are a bunch of lemmings. All right. Listen, I know Republicans are, man, that's a worrisome sign for Joe Biden. Those are a bunch of lemmings. They're a bunch of left-wing radicals. One of two things are going to happen on election day. They're either going to come out to vote for Joe Biden or they're going to stay home. They're going to do whatever they're pressured to do from other left-wing radicals. That's what they're lemmings. These people aren't leaders. So the word went out, on cell phone, social media, so on, et cetera, vote uncommitted. Oh, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. I'm just showing up for a protest vote. They're lemmings, all right? These aren't leaders. So I'm not sure exactly what to make of that, except to say I think they'll come back home, just like I think many people voting for Nikki Haley in these primaries will come back home in November. I don't suspect that we would have numbers voting as large as we did in 2020. I do think there will be some attrition attributed to the voting this season. I think fewer people will vote, but I could be absolutely wrong. But the left has done a great job beating down on us. All right, real quick, about 264,000 criminal cases have been suspended by the Houston Police Department due to a lack of personnel. Who wants to become a police officer nowadays? That's the problem. This Black Lives Matter, this defund the police movement, no respect for authority, police getting beat down. You can look at, this national movement of just cutting down, beating down, talking badly about police. Who wants to be one? All right. U.S. Army to cut 24,000 roles in massive restructuring. They're claiming that there are a lot of positions that aren't necessarily needed. Again, they're cutting the force by 24,000. They say it will help the service fight in the future wars. They say the almost 5% of jobs cut will mostly affect posts that have remained empty and not actual soldiers. They say, quote, the Army is not asking current soldiers to leave as the Army builds back in strength over the next few years. Most installations will likely see an increase in the number of soldiers actually stationed there, quote unquote. The Army, according to the Army, there also will be about 10,000 posts cut from cavalry squadrons, striker brigade combat teams. Sounds like teams that we need. Infantry brigade combat teams and security force assistants. Guys, they're having a hard time recruiting. It's as simple as that. They're having a hard time recruiting. Get rid of the wokeness in the military. Start acting like you love America again, you generals and Secretary of Defense, and maybe you'll get more recruits. All right, so that's another headline in the news. Oh, did you guys hear? I got a breaking news that Pope Francis was rushed to the hospital earlier today. What other? UK gives Mary Poppins movie from 1964 a PG rating. I cannot stand. Carl, why is this such a big deal? All right, here's the story. Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke's magical 1964 movie, Mary Poppins, and I've watched it because I have a daughter. I watched it when she was younger. All right, has been given an increased age rating in the UK as a result of discriminatory language. Actually, I watched it too as a kid. The British Board of Film Classification increased the Disney movie's rating from U, meaning universal, to PG, meaning it requires parental guidance. Mary Poppins contains two uses of the discriminatory term Hottentots. Quote unquote, a BBFC spokesperson told USA Today colonizers of South Africa used the term to refer to the indigenous Coco people, KHOE people, and it is now considered derogatory. Who gives a flip? I hate this political correctness. I hate going back in time to try to correct, try to put today's values on yesteryear's. And actually, when today's values, most of them are worse. I'll get into this story tomorrow. I haven't touched on Fannie Willis this week. I'll touch on it probably tomorrow. Or at least this week. But Fannie Willis, I mean, she had and she seems to be in trouble. That case is not looking good for Fannie Willis and her lover Nathan Wade. But also she has some DEI requirements in her office that was just straight up racist. All right. Now, speaking of political correctness, this is Senator Danica Rome. This is the Virginia State Senate. This dude, look at his big old hands. This dude, I'm sorry, guys. Let me just say this. And I truly believe this, and I posted this on X. Please follow me on social media. All things social media at Carl Jackson Show or at the Carl Jackson Show. I'm not playing these games of delusion with these lefties. I'm not doing it. All right. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like a man can be a woman. I don't care if it's Bruce Jenner. I'm sorry. I can't stand that Republicans are doing that. Somebody's got to stand for truth. Somebody has got to stand for truth. And I'm not going to be sit here and lectured by people on the left that say men can be women and women can be girls when they are freaking delusional. And all they're trying to do is institute a new morality, just like they're trying to institute a new or revisionist history in the United States of America. They're trying to wipe out everything that we hold dear in this nation and create something new, something that's crappy, and it's called socialism. And this is part of it. This guy's a useful idiot, whether he realizes it or not. He's a useful idiot for the left. He may seriously have gender dysphoria, or this may be social contagion because everybody thinks it's okay for a dude to pretend like he's a chick. But no, it's wrong. It is immoral. It is sinful. Whether you like to hear those words or not, it's reality. I can't stand this. I'm so over this crap. It's absolutely insane. All right. So this is Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears refers to transgender state senate. And honestly, you can't be transgender. I'm sorry. Before we even get to the video, you cannot be transgender. You cannot change your sex. And it's not gender. Stop using the word gender. He can't be transsexual. As a matter of fact, I need to correct myself. Carl. Don't say transgender. It's transsexual. You can't change your sex. You can't change your chromosomes. You can butcher your body, mutilate your body any way, shape, and form you want to. And guess what you'll still have? Gender dysphoria. Anyway, this is Senator Dan A. Rome getting offended that Winsome Sears referred to him as yes sir. And then when you watch the video, you can tell it wasn't intentional. She was kind of looking down, scampering through papers. But here it is. Here's the video. Let's go ahead and roll it. Por favor, Gabe.
The senator may state it.
Madam President, how many votes would it take to pass this bill with the emergency clause?
That would be 4/5, Senator.
And what would be the exact number for that, Madam President?
Yes, sir. That would be 32.
All right. So she says, yes, sir. And homeboy storms out. Look at how big he is.
Shall the bill
wearing a
pass?
dress
Those in favor of that motion,
and long hair.
Their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators? I am not
This
here
is Winsome Sears
to upset
addressing
anyone.
because they won't take the vote.
The job that the people of Virginia have called me to do, and that is to treat everyone with respect and dignity. I myself have at times not been afforded that same respect and dignity. But in this body, and as long as I am president of the Senate, and by the grace of God, I will be treated with respect and dignity, and I will treat everyone else with respect and dignity.
All right, so that's Winsome Sears addressing. The Democrats refused to vote on whatever measure they were taking up at the time because they were all butthurt over a dude pretending to be a woman storming out. Guys, listen, this isn't science. This isn't biology. This is a war on truth, and we can't sit here and pretend like this is okay. That's why it drives me nuts when Republicans do it. I'm sorry, I will never pretend like Bruce. I don't care what he believes. I will never pretend like homeboy is a woman. I won't do it. I don't care how many Republicans, conservatives do it. I will not do it because guess what? They're complicit in his sin too. And I'm not going to do it. All right, guys, this is the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Por favor. Until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.